Hi, in today's video I will draw cherries. I will show you how to bring in contrast, shadows and lights into them. In part 1 I will draw it with only a black and a white pastel pencil, and in part 2 I will draw it with colors red, black, white and green. So I wish you fun and enjoy watching. Before we dive in, I invite you to download my free butterfly drawing lesson. It's an in-depth, step-by-step drawing lesson. You'll find the link below in the description. Let's start here with the sketch. Let's sketch in the cherries. Let's draw here with the black pastel pencil the outlines. I draw the outlines with very light pressure and sketch them in. By the way, this apple on the left side I have also drawn. I will show you how to draw that with black and white in another video. You find the link to the apple video below in the description. And just sketch in the most important parts in the cherries here. I draw these cherries here only with the black pit pastel pencil from Faber-Castell and a white pit pastel pencil. Here I sketch in the highlights, and then I start with the dark shadow area. You find a very deep dark black shadow below the cherries at the bottom, and also on the cherries itself there is a shadow area. The shadows here at the bottom are called cast shadows. They are the shadows where the object is covering the bottom, and that's creating our shadows. It minimizing light, and yes, that's the darkest parts. And also on the cherries itself there are darks, and these dark areas, these shadows are called core shadows. And then I use a paper stamp to blend the darks, and then I start plotting in a thin layer of black on the cherry where we have the mid-tones, or so these are mid-tones where the black is more gray than not so deep dark black. Use a light hand for plotting in the black color, and leave the areas where the brightest highlights then are. I'm working here on a yellow, so a sand color of pastel matte paper from Clairefontaine, and I use a paper stamp here for blending the first base layer here, make it smooth and mix, or better blend the layers together so that there are soft transitions between the darks and the mid-tones. Blend all on the pastel pigments, also blend them into the highlight areas. I have left the space free for the highlight areas, and then blend everything, that everything comes together and you create a smooth surface here. That's really fun to do, and I use also kneaded eraser to add here some highlights, or pick away, remove a bit of pastel pigment and add a bit of black around the highlights here. It's always a play between lights and darks, and so a game playing with lights and darks, and adding then more and more colors while you're building up the layers. And use the paper stamp blending tool for blending the colors. Create also a blurry shadow below. I do that also on the left cherry here. Blend the first base layer. First base layers with pastel pencils always look a bit gritty and not so smooth, and then the paper stamp comes into place and you can blend them together. Here in the middle part the cherry is darker, so I add here a bit more black. In the middle part here is the shadow area where the light cannot hit the cherries so well. Then on the left side, so in the middle here, it is darker and we need to add a bit of more of the black. And the lightest areas on the cherry, they are called highlights, and I will add then later a bit of white too. This makes it then stand out even more. It's all about a layering. It's the same like you would do with colored pastel pencils, with colors. Layer different, so draw different layers and also play a bit with pressure. It is really fun to do such black and white exercises. I really have enjoyed to draw these cherries with only the 2 pastel pencils. You could also try to do it with charcoal. So use a black charcoal pencil and a white charcoal pencil and do the same. You also don't need for these exercises the pastel mat paper. I know many people cannot afford it at the beginning, so if you were just starting out drawing with pastels, then use sandpaper with a higher grit number, for example. You can get them in hardware stores and use them for practicing. These cherries with a smooth surface you can also draw on other pastel papers where you don't have to draw many layers with hair, fur structure and so. They are not working well on a pastel paper like Strathmore, for example, or watercolor paper, but for drawing subjects like these fruits with a smoother surface, it's possible to draw also on that paper and just practice blending, adding layers or blending different values. So concentrate on the darks and the lights and adding really dark shadows and highlights. Here I've drawn the stems and now the white comes into place, and I add really here the white dots where the highlights are, the lightest areas where really the light is reflected on the cherries. And then I blend it, always create soft transitions between the layers, and I add here a bit more white also on the left. These highlight areas, these lighter areas, they are called center light. So they are called center light where the sun or the light source hits the object, and plot in there a bit white and then blend it. That really helps to let your subject pop and to create this depth and contrast and increase this 3D effect. So you also can do these studies only with the black for sure, but bringing in a bit of white makes them really glossy and increases the contrast a bit more. Here I blend it with the paper stamp again, make soft transitions, blend the black and white layers together like you would do with the colors. So I really like this white and black style. I know also not everybody likes to work with colors. I have started with graphite pencils when I have started out drawing, and then I fall in love with pastels. But drawing with black and white here, it's really great. You can even add white on top of the black. That's possible on the pastel mat paper, on sandpaper, and that's so fun to do, to bring the highlights on top. I then also add some more details, darken down the areas here above where the stem grows out, and bringing in some little dots and darken down the really dark shadows. Bringing in here some more black dots to create a bit of this skin or the structure here of the cherry, the pale, and add some little dots in black and in white, or with very little pressure, some gray dots. Just make them a bit more realistic and add black around the outlines. more dots here. So play around. This is really fun to do. Take some time, also blend always between the layers you are drawing. And again with the white, some more highlights. So drawing these cherries with only black and white also helps you to see the different values, how many values you have to bring in, the very lights, the very darks, the mid-tones, the transitions between the different gray tones, mid-tones. Then I add a bit white on the stems to add highlights and black to add a bit more darks, and also then blend over it with a paper stamp to make it a bit softer, and blend a bit over the bottom, over the shadows, let them fade, and then it's finished. And now we will draw these cherries with color. Here I start with the white pastel pencil for the sketch, because I'm using also then reds, and I don't want to have a black outline here, of course. So let's do the sketch with the white pastel pencil and sketch in a bit of a ground here and the outlines of the cherry. Always use very light pressure and bring in all important details in the sketch. Let's also sketch in the stems here with these little wooden parts, and also the shadows. These are the cast shadows below our subject. The dark shadows, I draw them here with black. Sketch them in with black, and then let's start. Let's then darken down the darkest areas. These black shadows below the subject are called occlusion shadows, the darkest areas where no light hits. And then plot in a dark red for the darkest shadows, the core shadows on the cherries. The areas in the shadow part of the cherries that are, when you draw it in black and white, really black, I draw them here with a dark red. So choose a very dark color. If we have here different red tones, then use a dark red, and then we also can bring in the lighter areas with a light red. So plot in a bit of lighter red color. I use here pink pastel pencils, and this is a Capputello from Stabilo. They have brilliant red tones in the range. And then I add the highlights that they are in place, the lightest highlights with white, and continue to plot in a bit of the light red where we have the lighter areas in our cherries, where the light source hits our subject. There I work with a mid-tone, and this is the light red. When you're working with colors, for sure you have more colors than only black, but you then can use different values of red. I use the black here for darkening down the dark red. In the ranges of the pits or Capputellos, there is not the very dark red included, so you can mix pastel pencils, pastel pigments so easily together, and just darken down your shadows, the core shadows on the cherries with black, and blend the layers together. Use a paper stamp and mix colors. Blend the reds, blend the dark red and the black, and then you have an even darker red, and blend the dark red then together with the light red. Create smooth, soft transitions. I also blend here over the cast shadow here below and over the occlusion shadow below the cherries, the really dark, deep black areas, and let the shadow fade into the background. Here on the right cherry, also blend dark reds, the shadow parts together with the mid-tones, the They are also called half tones, the part between the lighter part and the darker part on the cherries, where the light cannot hit so well. And add a bit more black, even darken down more the core shadow areas on the cherries. It's again always a game, a change between darks and lights. Plot in a bit dark. I use here also the dark red and mix the black a bit with the dark red. So you can also use the pencils for blending and add another transparent layer with a little pressure here over. And so you bring your cherries to life and they are becoming more and more realistic. So just blend layers together and keep really the values right. So add blacks at the core shadow areas, add white at the lightest cherry areas, and mid-tones like here, the light red in the mid-tone areas. You can also mix dark red and light red to create another red tone for the transitions, like here where the shadows moves into the mid-tone areas. Then you have another red tone. Darken down this part here on the left a bit with the red. Then I take the white pastel pencil and add more highlights and details here on the left. It's the light area where the light hits the cherry. I also bring in here some dots to add a bit of a structure. So these little highlights on the pale of the cherries again, like we have did before on the black and white study too. And so you see, with just a light red, a dark red, black and a white pastel pencil, you can easily bring these cherries to life and give them a realistic look and give them depth by concentrating on the right values. Here I have also used a bit of green for the stems. I have realized that my right stem is too thick. I use a kneaded eraser to correct the outlines here to make it a bit thinner. And then plot in also green. Then I add a bit of ochre brown here for these wooden parts on top of the stems, and a bit black for the shadow. Here bring in also depth by adding the darks, adding the shadows on the stems. This the core shadow on the stems where the light hits not the part on the stems. Blend it with the paper stamp, always make it soft and smooth, and add also the light area on the stems with a sharp white here. Draw a sharp white line and blend it a bit with the pencil itself. Add some highlights on the wooden part, and I also increase the lightness of the highlights on the cherries. Add some more little dots, some more little details. As you know, I like to draw lifelike and very realistic. I like to draw details. So of course I also bring in here some details on the cherries, blend it a bit with a light red, that they are not so white, that they are more light red. Of course you can also brighten up the red with the white, or darken down a too white highlight with the red. I also add a bit of a light in the shadows here below. They are called light reflections in the shadows, and also some colors. Darken down the darkest black part below the cherries, add a bit black here, and it's finished. Okay, so I hope you have enjoyed it as I have enjoyed drawing them. I will definitely do some more of these black and white studies in future. I really love to do that, and it is also helpful to practice contrast, highlights and shadows. If you would like more drawing lessons, I invite you to download my free butterfly lesson. You can find the link below in the description. If you like my channel, I'm happy if you click the subscribe button, and if you have any questions, write to them below. I'm happy to answer, and then I hope I see you soon. Bye bye.